Anybody seen a live show around here somewhere? Oh, yeah, it's right here. Hello, everyone. What is going on? This is Unfound Live for the first day of June of 2026. Yes, we are still in 2026. We only have, the rest of this month to go, and we'll be halfway done. It is crazy. Absolutely insane. Hope all of you have had a positive week since we got together last Monday night. How was my week? Funny you should ask. It was fine, although I did get called an a-hole last week after the live show. A couple days after the live show. I'm not getting into it. So otherwise, though, my week was pretty good. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. And so there's that. I have a fantastic show lined up for all of you tonight because, you know, that is what I do. What is this? What is this doing? Because that is what I do. I do spectacular shows. I try to make it a habit. And I worked on the show some yesterday. Had nothing around 8 o'clock last night. Started on it last night. Got it done today. And I will be presenting this show tonight for your listening and viewing approval. As you can see for tonight, the three items that are guaranteed to be covered. The disappearance of Virginia Carpenter. We're going way back for that one. Then we're going to talk about an Antarctica disappearance. Yes, really. I came upon this and I was, as I say, I don't know every disappearance out there. You know, this is my work, but I don't know how any one person can know all disappearances. And I know sometimes when people will email me or it'll come up maybe in Messenger or even wherever, you know, somebody will mention a disappearance and they'll act like I already know it. And I think they'll be a little stunned when maybe I don't really know that one. You'll have to forgive me. But even I can say that if there is a disappearance having to do with Antarctica that I should have known about it, didn't. So we're going to talk about it tonight, or I'm going to talk about it. You're going to listen. You're going to make opinions over there in the chat. And then finally, going back to very close to my hometown of Leechburg, Pennsylvania, there is a murder trial going on. And a witness has gone missing. So I will be taking a look at that before we are done tonight. However, I have many other things that I would like to get to. Probably will get to most of them. But as you know, I try to budget the time pretty well. And we usually get out here around time. 2 hours is about all that my voice can take. Anyway. Let's see who's in here, and then I will continue. Hello, Charlie. You are very generous, nephew Charlie. Thank you so much. What Charlie's done there is hit the super chat right there, the $4.99 super sticker button. All you have to do is hit the super chat button below if you are watching on YouTube. I know sometimes the apps don't show it, but that's where it is. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. Hello, Sarah. What's going on with you? Anyone? Well, hello, Ed. Well, hello to you. And Lisa, good to see you. You know, Lisa, it's funny. Just before I turned the camera on tonight and the microphone, I was watching the Kansas City Royals playing the Cincinnati Reds. So I know you live in the area. You're a Chiefs fan. I'm not sure you're into baseball or not. But was watching your Royals. I know they aren't very good this year. Hello, Carpet. Yeah, Ozzy. Yeah, it's been a while, but I guess you're saying that because some people have said I look like Ozzy with my hair, and I always like to make sure I ask them, the early years, right? The 1970s Ozzy, hopefully. Yes, that's true. He dead. Very sad, Carpet. Hello, LaFord. What's going on? Good to see you. Thanks for making the time tonight. D, what's going on? I'm late. Yeah, D. You just joined the fire department. All right, D. Good luck with that. Watch out for those flames. Hello, Fishing. What's going on? Checking in. Yes, hello, Tech. What's going on? Lisa, love the Royals. All right. All right. Very good. And Tech says, and all the peeps, yes. Going back to Carpet here. Ed, have you ever looked into the Andrew Gosden missing persons case? I wouldn't say I've looked into it, Carpet. I know about it. That's the kid, boy, forget how old, but certainly nowhere near adult age. Took off. He was seen on video over in England, right? I wouldn't say that I have not looked into it. I would not say that I know anything more about it than any other general public person who takes an interest in disappearances. Have never tried contacting anybody in his family. Certainly we have featured some disappearances, not on the North American continent, as we even went to Wales. Heather Grotman brought us a disappearance from Wales. Certainly love to cover like Trevor Dealey over there in Ireland. Of course, we went to New Zealand. But I know about it. Never have tried to contact anybody's family. I don't even know if they do media. And I don't think anybody who has worked with me on the podcast has tried either. What happened? Hard to say. It does seem that he left all on his own. Maybe he was sighted with an adult or something. Certainly could be foul play, but I just don't know enough about it to really comment. Hello, Amy. What's going on with you? Good to see you tonight. Thank you for making the time on this Monday night. While you are watching tonight, of course, I already talked about how you can contribute through the super chat. You can also go to patreon.com/unfound podcast. You get a lot of cool stuff over there. So, patreon.com/unfound podcast. Please consider it. PayPal.me/unfound podcast. And you can also check out the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. You can go to Instagram. Of course, we are on Facebook as well, both the page and the group. If you want to join over there, like it, share it, review over there. And then my new venture, do you need help? If so, missingpersonsconsulting.com. So there you go. D, yes, sorry, we have to move Tuesday night. You're moving from your home, D, the one that has the train that's so close. You're moving from there? Wow. If that's so, will the train even be closer now? I don't know. I'm just joking around. I hope that's a positive move there, D. It's a big change, D. Joining the fire department and moving. You got a lot of things going on in your life. Maybe a little stressful. Tech, you are very, very generous. Thank you so much. In Australian money, too. So exotic. Thank you so much, Tech, for tuning in. Must be well into Tuesday down under. And, of course, you're just getting into your winter down there. Sorry about that. But thank you for tuning in. Always good to hear. You know, I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. There's no way, of course, given my age of being 55, I will be 56 in exactly 2 months. And don't worry, I won't let you forget. I never could have imagined, growing up thinking that you'd be able to do something from home with just a computer and a microphone and be able to talk to people all over the world, just like that, and essentially for free. I mean, it's crazy. It really is crazy. if this were, somebody even just as far back, not even that far back, like the 1700s, were just to pop in now and see what's going on with communication and everything, they would think that we are aliens. It would look like this is like magic or something. It's so crazy. The human mind. It's a mind blower. Forgive the pun. Hello, the cake. You're not just not cake. You are the cake. All right. I love cake, but I've had to stay away from it. Tech, yes, just starting winter. Yeah. Stay warm down there, Tech. Stay warm. And thank you once again. You're very generous. So what has been going on with me since we all got together? Like I said, somebody called me an a-hole this past week. Just so stupid. Trivia last Wednesday, not the greatest night for my team, but we did get the final question right with points. So we managed to salvage it. We're still in the top 5 with just a couple weeks to go to the end of the season, but I think we're in good shape. I think we're doing okay. I think we're going to be fine. Just had a kind of a really off night. Just some bad choices. Of course, there were questions we didn't know, but we missed a total 10-point question, which really hurt. And just being a little too quick on the trigger on it. So, but on Saturday, my team on Saturday, we won again. So that's 2 weeks in a row. And once again, we won pretty easily, although nobody got the final question right. So trivia continues to go pretty well. It's interesting the role I play on each team. Of course, different group of people, different ages, different backgrounds and everything. And one thing I can say for sure, though, that any team that I've been on the last, 15 years since I moved to Florida, man, we do win. And I seem to be a common denominator within all that, but maybe it's just I know the right people to be around. I think I'm not going to put me and say, oh, Ed, you're so smart. It's certainly not that. It's just I think like I said, I think I've just chosen to be around a lot of knowledgeable people, good teammates, and working well together. And I've just been a part of that, making good choices when it comes to that. And it really, as I only have fun if I'm winning. So I had a lot of fun in trivia over the years. Yeah, Tech, you're welcome. I am a greeting. Do you know there were active volcanoes on the moon during the time of the dinosaurs? I did not know that. I'm a dinosaur coming in with the trivia tonight. Maybe I'll remember that for a trivia night. I am a dinosaur. I will try to remember that. And active volcanoes on the moon during the time of the dinosaurs. Okay. All right. Too bad that, what was it, a meteorite or asteroid or whatever that hit the Earth. Too bad it could, if it would have hit the moon instead, dinosaurs would still be around, I guess, right? And of course, the moon has played that role in certainly rocks that have been added to the Earth hitting the moon instead. It's kind of like Earth's shield or something. Yes, you miss your friends. Somehow you survived. You must have been, off Earth at the time or something? Yes, I miss my friends. That's cute. That is funny. I'm a dinosaur. That's pretty good one. That's a good one. So trivia going really well. Hopefully it will continue to go well. Today somebody showed up to look at my bathroom. I don't even know what they did. The shower, my shower, the main shower it's attached to the main bedroom. I think I told you the last couple of weeks it's started leaking, and be through the towel or something. The water is like seeped in and everything. So two guys came over this morning, and when they got here, I let them in, went down to the gym for like an hour and a half. When I came back, they were gone. I don't even know if they did anything. I'm looking over and at it. I really can't tell much of a difference. So I don't know. I messaged the person who hired them and everything. So maybe they got it all done. They didn't even see it. They had like a caulking gun and a few other things. So I don't even know. I don't know the first thing about plumbing and tiling and countertops and laying tile or brick. I know nothing about any of that. So it's for with that, it's not all that, and looks too. It's with that, it's just looks. So I guess I'll have to test it and see. And in fact, when the guy got here and he went in to look at it, he goes, "Wow, this is old." And he goes, "Man, this looks like the original shower setup from when the building was built." And I say, "Well, you're probably right." And that's when I had to tell him, "I rent. I didn't buy this place. These are some of not my choices, just so you understand." So we had a little bit of a chuckle about that. But yeah, I don't know what the other rest of the condos are like or anything. But yeah, this one has not been redone or updated in quite a long time. Of course, I've lived here for over 7 years, so. But I think in some ways, some of the stuff in this condo is actually from 20 years ago. But you got the view, you got the location, you got all that stuff. So I can't complain. So I've been taking showers over in the guest bathroom, and it's so weird. You would think that the master bedroom and that bathroom would be like a lot better. In some ways it is. You have dual sinks over in the master bathroom, and there's the tub over also next to the shower in the master bathroom. But I'm not making this up. The shower in the guest bathroom is like twice as big as the shower in the main bathroom. I mean, when I take a shower over in the guest bathroom, it's like taking a shower in a parking lot. It just feels so expansive compared to the one, of course, that I've been using for the past 7 years. So I'm gonna have to get back to used to taking a shower like in a telephone booth. That's almost what it's like. So the bathroom, I don't know if it's fixed or not. Like I said, I guess I'll test it out tomorrow. What else is going on is I went and did my weight. I woke up Sunday morning, yesterday morning, Saturday morning, maybe both days. I woke up at 165.8 pounds. How about that? I was kind of stuck at that 168, 169 for a while. And then boom, I got up and there it was. And you could kind of tell. And so I was like, yep, I think it's about time I go get some new jeans. I've not bought jeans since I moved to Florida. That's a true story. And in fact, if you've been around me here in Florida, when I go out and everything, I just don't wear jeans. I have some like cargo type pants and then some athletic pants and things like that. And I got some jeans, but I really didn't like them and couldn't take them back and everything. So I'm like, well, this is just what I'm going to do. And then I was thinking, one of these days, I think that I'm going to want to lose some weight. So it's no use buying jeans if you think that you're going to be losing some weight somewhere down the road. Well, little did I know it was going to take this long. And so I told myself that once I got up one morning and I was down 165, that was the time that I was going to go buy some new jeans. And so I did that and went over to the Countryside Mall where my brother Brian used to work in a shoe store over there. And I hadn't been in that mall in years and years and years. And so I went in and got one pair, and they only had one pair in my size. And so I ordered a couple pairs. So I bought a total of 3 pairs of new jeans, 2 black, 1 kind of gray, like dark gray, And they are the brand name BKE. And if you're wondering what size I now wear, remember, I'm like 5'9". I'm like average height guy. And so the measurements of the jeans that I bought, I couldn't even believe it. And now I think, they really, really, for people's egos, they really are playing around with like sizes of pants and stuff these days. Because really, now that I've lost some weight, I'm probably down to like 33, 32 inch waist, somewhere in there. Like, around like my belly button, right in that area, about 32 to 33. And so I got a pair of 31 inch length, 32 inch waist. And I put those on and I was like swimming in them. I was like, what's going on here? What's the difference between, what's going on here? And so what I ended up buying that actually fit well is 30 length and 30 waist, but there's no way that it's 30 length and 30 waist. It's more like 32, 32. And like I said, I think they just do this to make people, oh, no, you're not a 38-inch waist. No, try these 36 inches. See, those fit you just perfect, kind of get into people's egos and make them feel better. I think that's what these companies are doing, because I couldn't believe it. And the young woman who was assisting the salesperson there was very helpful. She gave them to me, and then I put them on. I was telling her, like, man, these aren't close at all. And we had a little laugh about that. I think she kind of knows that. And so she ended up bringing me the right size. And so got that done today. Very excited about that. Cause I was due. I mean, really, no jeans since, I take that back. I did buy some jeans when I lived here, like, since I moved here, but after a while, I just didn't like them. They didn't fit, I bought them and I thought I'd get used to them. And then I decided they didn't fit right. And then I stopped wearing them. And that was that. But this time, much better choice. And I think it's also because I feel a little more confident about how I look. And, now that I think I'm a little more secure about how I'm going to be able to keep weight off and my eating and fitness and everything else. Because there's no use buying new clothes if somewhere down the road you think they're not going to fit. So I got that done. Fishing says, Lisa, what's everybody? Lisa, my son is skin and bones and is a 30-inch waist. Super proud of you. Looking great. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah. And Fishing says you can't go by sizes anymore. Shoes for sure. Shoes, Fishing, my opinion, closer. You have to remember, my brother Brian, a shoe salesman for like almost 20 years. He started in Vegas and then started doing that once he moved to Florida. Knows everything there ever is to know about shoes. He's spectacular. And I'm really fortunate because he and I kind of have the same size foot. So he'll get some shoes and then he'll give them to me and everything. So I kind of benefit from that. But I have to say, I've been wearing like a size 9 since 9th grade. And size 9 is still the same, at least in the shoes that I wear, like mainly like New Balance. But maybe if I were to try different shoes, different brands, maybe it would be different, and you could be right about that, Fishing. The thing for me is the width. They really got to get the width of the shoe. I have wide feet, size 9, but they're wide. So that's usually the thing, like with my brother Brian, really have to be careful with that. If he's going to give me some shoes, and I have to make sure that they're wide enough. And then one more thing, car getting worked on tomorrow. I had a list of things that I want to get done to it. It's running fantastic, no issues, loving it. But want to get the differential, which is the of course the gears in the rear end. Of course, it's rear wheel drive. Want to get that fluid change because it's known to be very, very touchy in Mustang, so I'm going to get that changed. I think the brake pads are low. Get that changed. New spark plugs, a few other things. Got a little creaky thing going on the front end, probably some bushings or something. After 15 years, rubber probably dried out. So tomorrow morning, first thing, taking the car over to have it, get all that stuff done. And then one of my trivia teammates who just happens to live near there, she said she would give me a ride home. So that might be nice. Although it's not that far away. I could walk home and get my steps in for the day. So I'm throwing that around what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. So that is what's been going on. It's kind of been cloudy. I really haven't been out on the beach because it's been cloudy. I was out on Friday, but then Saturday, Sunday, and then today, just kind of cloudy. No rain or anything, but just not very go and layout. And I usually am listening to some podcast or something while I'm out. It's just not the right. In fact, there weren't many people out there this weekend at all, given that it's May into June and it didn't rain, but there still weren't a lot of people out there. That should probably tell you kind of how the weather was. Sabrosa, hello. What's going on, Sabrosa? Good to see you. My willpower for snacks goes right down at night. Is there a time of day that's harder for you to control your willpower? Night is certainly something, Sabrosa. You're not alone. You're not alone. But as I said, of course, the Q&A episode came out. If you got to listen to that, I went through my routine and how I've been able to lose like 20 pounds now. No drugs, no fasting, no joining any cults or anything like that. The thing that helped me is don't allow any crap food to be in your house. Don't allow that. Don't allow that. That is what has worked for me. Because otherwise, if you get one of those bad cravings, then it means, well, it's late at night. Well, now if you're getting relaxed, well, now I got to put on my shirt, got to put on my pants, got to put on my shoes. I got to go out to the car. I'm kind of tired, and then if you're going to, you have some time to contemplate and really have a chance to, to think, wait, what am I doing here? In contrast to those cupcakes or whatever that are sitting right there in the refrigerator. It's just an idea. That's what works for me. Now, my thing was not sweets. Once again, this all was in the Q&A episode that came out on Friday, along with the latest Atlantic series episode. Hopefully, you'll all listen to both eventually. I know it's a lot of time for listening. It's like 3 hours total or something like that. But my thing isn't sweets. It's salty stuff. Cheez-Its, potato chips, pretzels. I can't buy that stuff. Can't do it. Can't do it. So that, if you were to go into my refrigerator right now, you'd open it up and said, man, there is not one fun food in this entire refrigerator. And you'd be right. You open that refrigerator up, it just may be the most boring refrigerator that actually has food in it in the world. Probably. So, Brosi, do you ever cheat and take the car out for a late night drive to McDonald's? No. No, I don't. What I've discovered, Subrosa, I found my vanity again. In losing weight, I have found my vanity again. I'm a little vain. And that's why I've joked around when I started weighing myself. I've joked to all you, why didn't all of you tell me that I was getting fat? I found my vanity again. And once you start seeing yourself as a skinny person again, and you start really saying, I really want to, I know vanity is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's just a deadly sin that you're going to have to allow to flourish. That's all I can tell you. That works for me as well. And so then when you can go to buy some new clothes and things, and people are actually telling you, man, Ed, you've really lost some weight, you're looking good, then it just kind of feeds into it. And then it's like, well, I don't want to let myself down, let these people down, yada, yada, yada. And never did I think I'd be 165 pounds again. If you would have told me this just a half year ago, I would have said, you're crazy. Here I am. All right, but thank you for asking, Sub Rosa. I do get cravings, but like I said, they're stopped because nothing that can get me in trouble is in this condo. And for me, of course, for me to really go against that, I have to go down, go over the elevator, ride the elevator down, walk out to my car, get out of there, go way down the street, and you have a chance to say, stop yourself. All right, let's get to tonight's topics. And I'm just going to start with this one. And some of you might have seen it and maybe not even put it all together. It's not one of the items in the headlines, but it made national news. And there was a shooting straight that way about a mile from where I live. There was a shooting in Clearwater Beach. I think it was yesterday. And what happened, it's so weird. I was just talking about meetups last Monday night. Remember me talking? How weird is that? Last Monday night, I was talking about, kids or adults meeting up with cars and doing drag racing and spinning out and fireworks and taking over intersections and everything else. Well, they had some sort of teen takeover up on Clearwater Beach yesterday evening. And somebody had a gun, started shooting around. Nobody died, but you can find the videos online all over the place. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, regular news stations all over the place regarding. And when you see those streets, those are streets that I drive on not all the time. Because usually when I go out of my place, I go south. But if, for example, when I'm going, like I've talked about going to concerts, going over to the Sound, I go out here, go left, go out actually through downtown Clearwater Beach where the beach and actually everything is. Those are the streets I go right over. It's right up the street from me. And I mean, I don't even know how many kids are out there, hundreds running around, and there was a fight and they got it on video, multiple angles. Of course, everybody has a camera these days. The police got called in and I was, I didn't even know what was going on. Cause of course on Sunday evenings, I do the Think Tank, patreon.com/Unfound podcast. If you'd like to join, I do the Think Tank at 7 p.m. So, and up here on the 8th floor, it's pretty quiet, but I'm sitting here doing our Think Tank yesterday evening. And I even said something to the members last night. And in fact, if any of them are in here, you might even remember me saying, wow, sirens, man, some cops or sirens just went by. That's not totally unusual out here. But given how many went by my building within a few minutes, it's like, wow, is there a fire? And I was thinking, is there a shooting? But little did I know what was going on right north of me was these teen takeover and these kids just running amok and getting in fights and everything else that was going on right up there. And I suppose if it would have been a different night of the week, I guess it's conceivable that I could have been coming back from somewhere and coming back that way and, run into all of it. It's certainly conceivable. And once in a while, I will admit sometimes when, if I go out and there's a couple coffee places that I like to go and do work late at night, that are open to like midnight or something like that. Sometimes when I'm coming home, I'll just ride right by my building and I'll just cruise up, through Clearwater Beach just to see what's going on. I guess it could have happened that way as well. But yeah, it was right up the street from me. And so if you see any of those, I don't live there, but before I chose this condo 7 years ago, I looked at one building up there that was right in the center of all of it. You could see it right there on the video of a condo building that I looked at just days before I decided to move in here. The reason I didn't move into that one up there, even though it was a little bit cheaper per month, but it was unfurnished. So I would have had to have gotten my own furniture and everything. I don't own any furniture. So whereas when I moved in here, all this stuff, this desk, the TVs, everything, it was all here. So that's the only reason I didn't end up there in Clearwater Beach where this was going on. And that certainly would have been something. Of course, had I been living up there, I would have been right in the middle of the hurricane, that happened in 2024, the one that really flooded. Clearwater Beach got trashed. I would have been right in the center of all of that. Of course, down here, we had water out in the street, but my property did not get wet at all, amazingly. Whereas up in Clearwater Beach, it just completely got trashed. And I would have been right in the middle of that had I been in that building up there. The only thing I would say about that is sometimes I wish I had moved into that building up there because it is kind of in the center of all stuff. You can walk right downstairs, and go out the front, and there's bars and stuff that line that area and everything. But with that, it gets a little wilder and riffraff and all of that stuff as well. So give and take. Yeah, shooting in Clearwater Beach. Nobody got killed. Somebody did get hit. There is a video of a car getting pulled over and cops dragging the driver out and everybody. They have their guns out. And although I did read that the shooter, whoever did this, is still on the loose. So whoever they took out of that car was not the actual person that was firing the gun. Now, why this person did on the video? Why did that person get taken out of the car? I don't know. But I would also remind all of you, very unusual. Of course, with these meetups and the way, kids can organize and everything these days, it can happen anywhere, I guess. But otherwise, fairly unusual for something like that. Although I should say a disc golfer who I know really well, though I'm not seeing in a while, some years ago, he and his brother were up there and they got attacked. They were going out to their car and they got in some big fight in a parking garage up there. I forget exactly why it happened, but it is more of it's more of a party crowd up there. If you think about Clearwater Beach, if you're thinking about spring break and all, that is up there. We don't get that down here, even though we're less than a mile away. That really doesn't go on down here. Mainly because these are condo buildings, not hotels. There's actually hotels where these are condo buildings. The owner of these condos are really a little more picky about who they're going to allow to rent, if they're renting them out and everything. Of course, these are a lot more expensive than hotel rooms up there. So we just don't get that kind of thing down there. But if you saw that in the news, that is like a mile from where I live. But please do not let that influence you in any way. If you want to come down to Pinellas County, come down here and enjoy Clearwater Beach, I would urge you to do so, and maybe we could even meet up. All right, moving on. Just getting to some Unfound stuff. Of course, the newest Unfound Now episode came out. Got it done. Got these things done this weekend. I'm very excited to do that. Took a look at the disappearance of Kevin Green. Kevin Darrell Green. Really difficult to say, as if you've already watched or listened to the video, the episode. It just seems there's some missing pieces, and maybe some things have got twisted around. There seems to be some contradictions. I'm not saying it's always going to be like that. In fact, it's not hard for me to believe that maybe just a few months from now, some of these things will get straightened out. And of course, I'm hoping that Kevin is found alive tonight, tomorrow at the latest. But if he isn't, I think these things will get straightened out. It's hard to predict which direction, though, it's going to go. It's a little unclear to me on when they realized he was missing. It's a little unclear to me on when he ended up at this acquaintance's house. It's a little unclear to me why, it took 3 or 4 days to find the truck after the guy showed up at the acquaintance's house. These things are just not clear in the accounts of what happened between NamUs, an actual media site story on his disappearance, and a reputable Facebook page that is detailing his disappearance. Between all the three of them, they're just a little different. And I'm inclined to think that the NamUs account is the most accurate, but it is the one that leaves the most questions. So check that out. Newest Unfound now. Kevin Darrell Green went missing somewhere around April 12th of 2026 from Harrogate, Tennessee. Didn't even know that there was a place called Harrogate, Harrogate. So check that out. For all of you people who are YouTube and Patreon supporters, this found episode is of the RMS Lusitania, from its disappearance to discovery. It got sunk by a torpedo in 1915 and was not discovered on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean / the English Channel until 1935. And so I go from the disappearance, why it sank, to all those years in between, looking for it, people talking about it, and then I get into how it was eventually discovered. Of course, the sinking of the Lusitania is what eventually brought the United States into World War I, not World War II, but World War I. RMS Lusitania, and it's so crazy. You think about the Titanic sank in 1912, and then just a few years later, another cruise liner goes down. Many people get killed. Of course, one was an accident. Another one was, an act of war. But just 2 cruise liners like that killing that many people. You just imagine if that were to happen today. You have a Carnival cruise ship, that sinks somehow, and 1,000 people get. You can't even imagine that today. But, there was the Costa Concordia that sank off the coast of Italy. Of course, a couple people did get killed, but you figure of a ship of 2,000 people or whatever, how many people got killed? I think less than 10 or something. So, but imagine if the Costa Concordia, a bunch of people gotten killed, then just a few years after that, another cruise ship, sinks or something. You just can't even imagine it today. But it did happen back then. That's the Titanic's sister ship. It's not. Lusitania was not Titanic's. The Titanic's sister ships were called the Olympic and the Britannic. And you should look those 2 ships have some interesting history as well. If you ever want to look them up. At least one of them also sank. So if you want to look that up. Lusitania, not a sister ship. In fact, I'm not even sure it was part of the same shipping line, but I could be wrong about that. But for all you Patreon, at least the $5 a month supporters and above, and then all of you YouTube supporters, please check that out. It's available right now for your listening pleasure. Moving on, I'm very, very ecstatic to say, You do not even know how pleased I am by this, that my interview with a member of the Coast Guard Investigative Service happened last week. We got it done, and it is awesome. And you will eventually hear it on an upcoming episode of Unfound as part of our Atlantic series. His name is Caleb King. It's part of the Coast Guard Investigative Service. He did not go to the Coast Guard Academy. He's not out there on ships, but this is a federal department, and they do investigations. And he talks about all of that to start his interview. And he is the guy who got into looking into the disappearances of Teresa Hickman and Angela Westbury, and even how he came to be doing that is a fascinating story. And so I interview goes for over 2 hours, and you're going to learn about an investigative department of the federal government in the United States that just never gets talked about. Although they do investigations just like the FBI, they're a law enforcement agency, and you just don't hear about it. I think maybe people think FBI or the NCIS and other branches that have investigative departments affiliated with the military. Well, this is certainly probably the least known, and it was fascinating to hear about it. And then, of course, we did a deep dive on Teresa and Angela's disappearances, and he has a lot more information to add to the interviews that Anita and Denise did. And we also talk about a couple other disappearances that are being featured during this series. So, wow. Once again, just like I said earlier, talking about, of course, tech down there in Australia, thinking about being able to communicate with people in Australia, that if you would have told me, however long ago, that I would have been able to interview a retired lieutenant from the NYPD, of course, Dr. Grace Telesco is a good friend of mine, or a retired FBI agent like Julia Cowley from the Consult podcast, and now an investigator for the Coast Guard Investigative Services, I'd be like, what am I doing with my life? What is going on here? And it was really, really amazing. And I do need to take the opportunity to thank the Coast Guard Investigative Services superiors, Caleb's superiors, and their PR department or whatever you want to call it, and the Coast Guard itself for allowing him to appear and to have a very free-flowing conversation about a bunch of different topics. I could not be happier, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's going to be a couple weeks, though, so you're going to have to cool your heels for a little bit. But I was a little wary of it because there's no guarantees with these things. He wanted to come on, but it's not, really overtly his decision. And we know how law enforcement can be when talking to the media and everything. But I'm so happy that we could make it happen, and they allowed him to appear. And I wouldn't say it was a no holds barred interview. There were a few things that we had to stay away from. But really, I cannot complain at all. So it happened, and you'll get to hear it. Sub Rosa, missing at sea is a nightmare scenario. Looking forward to the series. Yeah, what's happening right now, Sub Rosa? We're 3 episodes into it, and I'm thinking right now that the series is going to be at least 8 episodes total. So we're not even halfway yet. So I'm very excited about that. So there's that. Also, like I said, the Q&A episode came out. Hopefully you've had a chance to listen to it. I realize it was a surprise for all of you. And you got every week I give you a lot to listen to anyway. I realize a lot of the other podcasts you listen to, whether it's true crime or sports or whatever, they may be like 30 minutes or an hour. And here I am throwing 2-hour episodes at you because this is what I do. So I realize maybe sometimes you have to break them up into chunks. And I know some of you even listen to them at like 1.5 speed, which I have to say I don't like very much, but what are you going to do? But the Q&A episode, it's like, I would say it's like 75% true crime stuff and 25% self-help stuff. I talk about my sleep issues that I used to have, give some recommendations to getting over that. Talk about losing weight if you are interested in that. Also talk about how to buy a car online like I did, working with the car that, ended up being mine. So there's some life tips in there as well. And, I didn't want to, because I know I get so many personal questions, but sometimes they're a little too self-serving. So if I'm going to answer something like that, I hope that it is helpful, to people. So there you go. All right, let's get to those items that are in the title of the show tonight. And I really want to start with this Antarctica story. I had no idea. I had zero idea. Of course, on the Earth, there are considered to be 7 continents: North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, and Antarctica. 7 continents. Of course, I play trivia. I know this stuff. And given what we know about those 7 continents, we know that 6 of them surely have disappearances on them. And I was thinking, well, at least we got Antarctica. At least there has not been a disappearance that has happened on Antarctica. Of course, there are not many people there, and nobody really lives there. And we have weather stations and military stations and whatever else down there. So I'm thinking, well, at least that continent hasn't had any disappearances on it. Wrong. And I'm just finding this out now 10 years into Unfound. And in fact, this disappearance happened quite a long time ago. So I want to go through it with you because actually there are some things that we can learn from this. Rockford, congrats on scoring the interview. Thank you. And hi, I'll work on cooling my jets. Great Q&A, by the way. Oh, you got to listen to all of it. Fantastic, all 2 hours. That was quite a broad range of topics. I'm a man for all seasons, Rockford. All right. Have you ever heard of Carl Robert Disch? Disch. Have you ever heard of him? Carl Robert Disch. And I came across him totally by accident. Was preparing for tonight's live show. And I was going through Wikipedia. I just look up weird stuff on Wiki. I realize there's errors there and everything else. But it's sometimes by just going through weird stuff on Wikipedia, I will find like some disappearance or some quirky thing that I have never heard about. It could be good for the podcast. It might be good for trivia. Who knows? And, just to impress people with all this useless knowledge I have in my head. And I came across Carl Robert Disch, presumed dead on May 14th, so just over 61 years ago. Presumed dead on May 14th of 1965. He was an ionospheric physicist for the National Bureau of Standards who went missing near Bird Station, Antarctica on May 8th of 1965. So there has been a disappearance on Antarctica. It's probably the only one. but it has happened. It's amazing. So I'm going to read, this is just directly from Wikipedia. Maybe if some of you are interested, you could go do some reading for yourself. I'm guessing there's more stories out there. I didn't go to newspapers.com to kind of see what was written about it at the time, or if there was even anything written at the time. But here is what Wikipedia had to say about this. So Carl, Mr. Dish, D-I-S-C-H, was stationed at the radio noise building at Byrd Station to work on his ionospheric studies. I don't even know what any of that means. I gotta be honest, I have no idea. The radio noise building and his ionospheric studies. Of course, we know, down there, being that it's at the bottom of the earth. And of course, when you're down there, you don't feel the effects of, the rotation of the earth as much. And so I guess you could do certain things down there. And of course, there's, the magnetic field is different down there. I guess there's a lot of things you can do in Antarctica that you can't, just do right at the equator or here in Florida or wherever else. And so he was down there doing these studies. And on the morning, of course, when I think about, remote places like this, I think of the, the movie The Thing, maybe, or the original Thing from Outer Space, the original from the 1950s. But The Thing with Kurt Russell, which is actually might be my most favorite horror movie of all time. It is fantastic. That's what I think of. So this is the way, as I'm reading this is kind of what's in my head. I'm seeing like that movie. Dish was stationed at the radio noise building of Byrd Station to work on his ionospheric studies. On the morning of May 8th, 1965, he left the radio noise building to return to the main station complex located 2.1 kilometers away. That's like, what would that be? 1 kilometer is like 0.6 miles. So that's like maybe a mile and a third. Not that far, like a mile and a third. So, a mile and a third. Of course, there are NASCAR tracks that are shorter than that. So at 2.1 kilometers away, he's walking. When Dish had not arrived at the main station within a reasonable amount of time, a rescue party departed the station to search for him. His trail was spotted, of course, footprints, but the search party had to go back to the station for refueling. Were they using some, I guess they didn't plan ahead. Upon their return, the trail had been covered by drifting snow and was never rediscovered. Despite exhaustive searches and measures taken to make the station more visible, including firing of flares and illuminating extra floodlights, Dish was never found, not even to this day, 61 years later. While he was missing, temperatures dropped down to minus 79 degrees Fahrenheit. For all of you Australians out there, that's minus 62 degrees Celsius. The search was called off on May 14th, so 6 days later. He is presumed dead, and his body has never been recovered. Memorial services were held in his hometown of Monroe, Wisconsin. He was only 26 years old. Now, there was a conspiracy. The disappearance of Dish has spawned many conspiracy theories. They are given legitimacy by an alleged message transmitted to McMurdo Station, once again down in Antarctica, in 1971, so 6 years later. The author of the message, claiming to be Dish, stated that he was alive. The message has been disregarded as a hoax. And the reason I think about McMurdo Station is there's a very famous plane crash that happened near there where it used to be back in the 60s and into the 70s that Air New Zealand would have a DC-10, which was a wide body jet, two engines on the wings, one engine on each wing, and then an engine like back in the center of the tail. They would use DC-10s, and people could pay, and they would take these touring flights. The jet would take off from New Zealand and fly down to Antarctica, and it was like a sightseeing tour. They'd fly around, and there's, of course, Antarctica has snow-covered mountains and everything. And people would pay big bucks, and of course, they could take pictures, and it was a little more lenient than like a commercial flight where you always had to wear your seatbelt and everything. Well, a jet, due to some navigational issues, and it was a big, huge mistake, and there was kind of a cover-up and everything. You can look at it. It was Air New Zealand flight, I think it was 901, if you want to look that up. Well, the jet flew right into a mountain in Antarctica, and the wreckage is still there. And that was near McMurdo Station. So you can look that up. Flight 901. So, like I said, I just read there was this conspiracy. Somebody claiming to be Dish claimed he was alive. The message has been disregarded as a hoax. So I'm here to tell you, even on Antarctica, you know how many people are down there at any one time? 20 people or something? Even down there has already been a disappearance. This guy walked off and something happened. Now, what of course occurs to me, I don't know if it just jumps right into your mind, but it does jump into mine, is Antarctica doesn't have any woods, doesn't have any trees. It doesn't have any, bodies of water. Remember, of course, Antarctica is actually land. It has permafrost and everything else. But under there is solid land. Of course, when we talk about the Arctic, that is actually a frozen ocean. There's no land at the top of the earth. But at the bottom, there is. That's why it's a continent. But no woods, no trees, no bodies of water, no rivers, nothing, and a search still failed. Now, I realize it's cold and they could only be out there for so long and everything. Still, this guy went missing and has never been seen again. So when we start thinking about disappearances that, of course, happened up here in the civilized world, when we think about Jason Landry and many others where people most likely walked off and searches fail, and everybody's like, well, how can it fail? All these people are out there, and we got drones, and we got dogs, and we got ATVs, and we got all this stuff, and people still go missing. Here, where there is no place to hide, it is a tundra. Guy went missing. And on top of that, I realized that there are ways that they clothe themselves and everything else, but I don't care however you are clothed down in Antarctica. You don't want to be outside for very long. Now, of course, we heard about, I don't know what the temperature was. I don't think it says it, what the temperature actually was when he actually was trying to walk from one building to the other. But being that it got down to minus 79 degrees Fahrenheit, I think it's probably safe to say that it was like minus 40 when he was out there. And, all those weird, physics things happen, steel cracks and, all sorts of weird things happen down at those temperatures. He couldn't have gone far. And even though there's snow there, it's not like it's winter wonderland. It's not like you're in the Swiss Alps and it's snowing and you're going up the ski lift and ski, my impression is that because of the way it is down there, it's so cold that it doesn't snow. The snow's on the ground and that's, it's permafrost and everything. So it's not like he could have gotten, Even though the snow was blowing, that doesn't mean any snow was falling. So it's not like he collapsed in the snow. It was snowing and it covered him over or anything. Still missing. Mind boggler. This just shows you how tough this stuff is. And this is why I will continue to say when searches fail in woods and everything, I'm like, yep, you just got to keep searching, man. You just got to keep searching. And if somebody can go missing walking from one building to other, 2.1 kilometers, like I said, like 1.3 miles, and even if the guy was suicidal, how far could he go? That's the real stumper of all of this. Even if he decided, you know what, I hate my life, I'm depressed, I'm down here in Antarctica, I'm stuck here for another year and whatever else, although I get the idea, given that he was involved in that work, I'm guessing he would like to be down there. But even if he were suicidal, I mean, where can you go? You're probably going to freeze to death before you walk anywhere that's really, 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 really out of range. Now, I don't know about polar bears. Could he have been attacked by polar bear? But then they would have maybe seen blood or something. Nothing. So there you go. If you want to look it up anymore, Carl Robert Disch, Disch, went missing on May 8th, 1965 in Antarctica. Rockford, similar to Ryan Stuka and Liam Toman, right? Of course, I know Ryan, don't know Liam. This case, Shuka case, not BC. In fact, Shuka's mom was interviewed in the Toman documentary. If you say so, Rockford. Well, with Ryan Stuka, obviously cold weather and certainly, but I'm not sure that's the deciding factor in Ryan's disappearance. Could be. Certainly it was cold and everything, but I'm guessing that alcohol might have played a role in that, among other reasons where I don't know. I think if we're looking at Carl's, maybe he was drinking down there, having a good time. They got beer down there or whatever else down there in Antarctica. Maybe he was drunk, but still, walking off and not being found. I think what I'm saying, Rockford, is it's much easier for me to understand how Ryan Stuka wasn't found or Liam Toman than this guy. But weather has to be a consideration. Anytime, whether it's really, really, really hot or really, really, really cold, certainly it's something to have to take into account. Whereas somebody goes missing and it's 70 degrees out, then I'm not sure that we can start pointing a finger at the weather and saying, yeah, well, maybe that caused something. But so there you go. Guy, I had no idea. I thought Antarctica was free of disappearances. I was wrong. All right. Let me get to this witness disappearing. This happened in New Kensington, about 15, 20 minutes from where I used to live in Leechburg, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. We actually covered a disappearance some years ago on the podcast. Was it Blaynor? I think it might have been. And she was wrapped up in, she was unfortunately an addict and was she was affiliated with some rough people, and certainly not crazy to think that she was murdered and somebody covered it up. New Ken, the town next to it called Arnold, known as being pretty rough areas, even back in my day, and even, in fact, well before my days of the 1980s. mafia presence in Arnold back in the day. And these days, very rough town for different reasons. So we have this story. The trial of a man accused in what prosecutors characterized as a New Kensington revenge killing was postponed Monday, so today, because a key witness could not be located. Jury selection for Larry Olson Nix II's of West Brownsville, Washington County, was scheduled to get underway in Westmoreland County Court. Instead, the trial was delayed after prosecutors told a judge they have been unable to find a woman whose testimony is vital to establishing a motive in the death of James Michael Hayes. Hayes was found dead on December 9th of 2022 with a gunshot wound to the head in the parking lot behind Kensington Arms Apartments in the 400 block of 11th Street. I'm not sure where that is in New Canaan. I've been there, but I don't really know the streets and things. It's been a while. The fatal shooting was the first criminal prosecution to be recommended by a Westmoreland County grand jury that for 18 months heard evidence in unsolved cases. The grand jury has since wrapped up its work. Prosecutors contend evidence presented to the grand jury linked Nix to Hayes' murder. Witnesses said the shooting was the final act in a series of events that started with allegations Nix robbed a victim and then was shot at by Hayes in retaliation. Assistant District Attorney Katie Ranker Elwood emphasized the importance of the missing witness during a pretrial hearing last week. Elwood said the woman's testimony was a key aspect of the case because it linked Nix to a prior robbery and showed he was previously targeted in a shooting. It proves the motive for the homicide, Elwood said. On Monday, as the trial was set to begin, Elwood told Westmoreland County Common Pleas Court Judge Megan Billick DeFazio the sheriff's deputies have been unable to locate the woman who is expected to testify about the events that led up to Hayes' killing. The judge last week issued a material witness warrant to ensure she was present at the trial. Billick DeFazio rescheduled the trial to begin in July as law enforcement continues to search for the witness. Defense attorneys Brian Aston and Ned Nichols agreed to the 1-month delay. Since his arrest last year, Nix has pushed for a speedy trial as he maintains his innocence. He has denied any involvement in Hayes' murder, and defense attorneys have previously argued that prosecutors cannot produce witnesses who can positively identify Nix as the man who fired the fatal shots. Witnesses testified before the grand jury that a man who matched Nix's description fired on Hayes after he stopped his vehicle to retrieve a jacket from the trunk of the vehicle. Police said 41 rounds, 41 bullets were fired from 3 guns, all from a distance from where Hayes' body was found. 41 shots. Because I guess 40 just weren't quite enough. All right, so we have this witness for this trial who has gone missing. And like I said, this is near my hometown, although I'm not familiar with every street. New Ken was there many, many times back in the day. Had friends that went to Valley High School, which is the high school for that area. Actually went to college with people who went to that high school. A lot of used to eat at the Eaton Park. It's a local restaurant chain in New Kensington. Down there many times. Rough area. Rough. So what are we supposed to think of this? Now, the reason I picked this out, of course, conveniently because it's near my hometown and everything, is what are we supposed to think about disappearances that, could be or allegedly connected to upcoming trials? These are people who are witnesses in crimes, and then these people go missing. What is really going on here? Well, first of all, we have covered a couple that, a couple of disappearances where it was alleged that the missing person was going to be testifying in a trial, or had information, or something like that. And if you're wondering what a couple of those disappearances might be, for the one that really always jumps into my mind is Lola Catherine Fry. That was original episode very early on in Unfound's existence. And then we revisited her disappearance, I think, last year. I played the original interview again. And there are certainly a couple more. But in Lola Catherine Fry's case, although now I think we can surely say that it had nothing to do with any conspiracy. I think that some guys, or at least one guy who was in her life, covered up her disappearance. And remember, her car is missing too. There was allegations. Lola was a dancer, and I think she had implants. And there was an idea that she was going to be involved in a lawsuit against these doctors because breast implants, at least at that time, were lethal. And in fact, I think they're even dangerous today. And instead of using saline, they were using silicone, and that could get into the body and really get into, the women's joints and really cause a lot of problems. And allegedly she was going to be involved in some sort of lawsuit, and then she goes missing. And those ideas are out there. And in fact, her sister, who was the guest, Darlene, I can even remember she and I talking about that. Although I have to remember, I can't remember whether we actually talked about that specifically in the interview. I don't remember. But I think now we can say with a lot of certainty that that's probably not what went on in Lola Catherine Fry's disappearance. Now, another one that might jump out to you, of course, she wasn't a witness. She was actually, the person bringing the lawsuit, of course, was Robin Abrams. She was in the middle of filing a sexual harassment suit against the Will County Sheriff's Office. And she was seen by her father. He's going one way, she's going the other. And then she disappears. Of course, her car was found. Her purse or something was found on the long side of the road, not near the car. There are allegations that she didn't park the car there. That actually a tow truck dropped the car off there, and that multiple deputies in the office were associated with mob people, and they just had to make Robin disappear. And she had this relationship with a married cop, and then when she broke it off, he wouldn't let her go. On and on and on and on and on and on. So we've at least covered a couple of people. One, I'm not so sure, Lola Catherine Fry, that really that was the case. But then with Robin Abrams, although not a witness, certainly involved in a trial, and then she goes missing. And I'm sure it's not a stat that I've tracked, but you might find a couple other disappearances within the catalog of 400 here that could kind of maybe be seen that way. People knowing something. And in fact, maybe some people might even think when Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, now that their bodies have been found, were they murdered because, they were, because of what went on that night, and was somebody afraid they might blab or something? I doubt it, but I can see why some people might think that. But overall, what should we think about disappearances that happen like this? Witnesses are supposed to show up for trial and don't. Of course, this has been a big topic. It's been a great topic for mystery novels and murder novels, movies, TV shows, Law and Order, and whatever else. My impression is that it's not very common. We may say back in the heydays of the mafia, whatever you want to consider the heydays to be, maybe like the 1920s through the 1980s, even though I know organized crime still exists. And certainly you know about it if you live in Chicago, New York, other areas. But let's just admit it. It's just not the way it used to be. Even since the time of the Sopranos show for 20 some years ago, my impressions changed, even though I know it still goes on. I just don't think it's very common. In fact, I think that the reason this story caught my eye is not even because it's not near my hometown, but because this kind of story, being that I'm looking for missing persons news all the time to read and see what's going on. It's just that these stories are so rare. You just don't see these kinds of stories anymore, where somebody's going to testify. Now, do people get scared out of testifying? Yes. Do people reconsider? For example, some sort of assault or rape or something, or battery, a husband, beating on his wife, and she files charges. And then as they get closer and closer to the trial, she starts having second thoughts and, we're going to reconcile, and she drops the charges. Yes. Do sometimes witnesses or somebody end up dead? Yes, but disappearances, it just seems pretty rare. Why has that changed? Like I said, I think it has changed. I think it doesn't happen as much. And I think because, first of all, as I will keep saying, the United States just isn't as violent a place as it used to be. Is it still violent compared to many other civilized countries, countries that have electricity and running water and established democratic governments and things like that? Yes. But within our own history, when it comes to the rate of violent crime, 1 per 100,000 of the population, or however, it's not looking at the total number, but as a ratio, the United States is back to murder rates and things going back to like the 1960s and 50s. So I think that's surely part of it. We just don't have much stuff like this happening, witnesses getting murdered or going missing, because there simply aren't as many trials for murders and things, because, like I said, the murder rate has gone down. I also think that we don't see as much of this because, speaking of organized crime and gangs and things like that, my impression when you look at actually violence in the United States, it's much more individualistic than it used to be. If we were talking about, for example, we were to go back to the 1920s in Chicago, if we're going to talk about violence, we're talking about organized crime. Whereas we're talking about violence in Chicago these days, certainly there are gangs there and certainly they commit murders, but I'm still inclined to believe it's much more individualistic. And in fact, I would say that about all violence in the United States. It's much more one person killing another person. It's not a group of people or one person who is part of a large group killing one person. Then there are witnesses, and then the group can kind of gang up on that witness or witnesses and put pressure on them not to show up. Because, of course, that's what the mob used to do. Or maybe still does, at least once in a while. It just doesn't seem like something that, it just doesn't happen enough that it is quantifiable, that it should be figured into when we start looking at disappearance statistics and why people go missing and something. This is not something that it just doesn't happen enough to really phase the stats at all. In contrast to people walking off because they have addictions. In contrast to people walking off because they have mental health issues. In contrast to husbands killing their wives and making their wives disappear. or boyfriends. And of course, some women have gotten into making their husbands disappear, like Shannon Collins. Like at least people are believing that. So it's just, I don't think something that if you were to do a study, as I've done with, of course, the database and all of that, it just doesn't figure into the calculations at all. Now, specifically for this case, it's just hard to say what happened here. The first thing we have to consider is that if this woman saw all of this stuff and was around these people, I guess we have to figure maybe she's not, the finest upstanding person either. Maybe. And so when you figure, that might go into this. She might be an addict. Of course, knowing New Ken, maybe she's a sex worker. And those people, of course, have transient lives. And they can go missing at any time. Doesn't have anything to do with any trial they're going to be in or anything else. The problem is we just don't know a lot about her. And of course, her name is not in this article. And probably somebody, I don't know if anybody in the public knows who she actually is. We also might consider that maybe she was stressed out about the whole thing. Maybe she was afraid that, she testifies and what happens. If this Nick's guy isn't found guilty, he's found not guilty, and then she's out there and he's out there. A lot can go into this. And I guess what I'm saying is when I look at this does not strike me as a disappearance where somebody, snatched her up because of what she was going to say in this trial. That's not what I'm seeing from this article. Now, I'm guessing there are people out there who know more about this, of course, especially people in New Ken who know more about this. And certainly if you do and you have facts that would make me change my mind, I'll certainly look at them. But I know that there are going to be people that read this who don't know a lot about disappearances, and they're going to say, well, they got rid of her. It's just not very likely. I think what's much more likely is this woman has a kind of life that, let's put it this way, she's probably not a college professor. She's probably not a surgeon. She's probably maybe somebody who doesn't have a very strong work history. She might have some criminal charges on her record as well. And we might figure in that maybe she's broken the law since this happened way back when in 2022. And there might actually be a warrant out for arrest for other things having nothing to do with this trial. There's a lot of different possibilities, in my opinion, that are much more likely than somebody got rid of her because of what she was going to say in this trial. And I don't know what happened here. Certainly innocent until proven guilty. But, maybe Nick's actually didn't do this or something. And so that has to be figured in. Just because he's being brought to trial, they could be wrong. The fact is that prosecutions of are people are being found not guilty all the time, despite there being strong evidence. So I just don't think it's very likely. Whoever this woman is, I'm hoping she's still alive, but I do not think that she was snatched up because of this trial. And it's just not something, if you ever read any stories about this, I think that you should be very, cynical when people try to say she got snatched up. Somebody didn't want her to testify. Very unlikely. That's that would be my insight into it, doing this work for 10 years. Now, what also is interesting just on the law part of it It's interesting to me that they're so interested in this article about the motive. Motive. You have to remember, motive is not an element of a crime. The prosecution does not have to prove motive, but it does seem that the motive they think it's important somehow. But remember, motive is not an element of a crime. In fact, even an example, let's, for example, the shooting in Las Vegas, where all those people at the concert got killed. The guy was over at Mandalay Bay, of course, knocked out a window and killed all those people. Of course, he did it. Of course, he was dead before he could ever be brought to trial. But if he would have lived, then they would have brought him to trial if he pled not guilty and everything. We still don't know technically why he did it. We can all sit around and be armchair psychiatrists. Well, it was this, it was that, he was down on his luck. But we really don't know. But that would not have been relevant in a trial situation to show that he did it. It's not like, well, they didn't prove motive, so he didn't do it. All you have to prove, of course, we know what we need. DNA, witnesses, fingerprints on the guns, and, signing for the room, his credit card paid for the room, and all of that stuff. So, motive is not an element of the crime, but it does seem for some reason they really think it's important that they need this woman for that in this particular trial. Barbara, Shauna, hello, Barbara. What do you mean there, Shauna? Barbara. Regarding unfound cases, maybe Marlo Chris Gully fits the unusual fact pattern. Yeah, this guy did get lured somewhere. Was he going to be tested? Was he a witness to something, Rockford? Once again, I apologize. I just remember the circumstances. He was walking along with a guy, and then a woman came along, and then Chris walked off with that woman, never to be seen again, if we're supposed to believe that. But I have to admit, if there was something about he saw something, I don't remember that, but 400 disappearances bouncing around up in my head. All right, let's get to Virginia Carpenter. We're going way back to the olden days of 1948. I have a lot of reading to do, and I got 28 minutes to do it. Going to take a look here at the disappearance of Virginia Carpenter. And this is the one that I'm going to analyze as best as I can. On Tuesday, June 1st, 1948, Virginia went to Texarkana Union Station and boarded the Texas and Pacific Texas Special 31. Those were the days, which departed for Dallas at about 3 p.m. The train stopped in Denton, Texas, about 6 hours later. Virginia was on her way to the Texas State College for Women, now called Texas Women's University, to enroll in the summer course. While on the train, Carpenter met Marjorie Webster, a middle-aged school teacher who was also enrolling at the same school. After arriving in Denton, both women hired a taxi driven by Edgar Ray Jack Zachary to take them to the college dormitories. As Webster was being dropped off, so as they were being dropped off at the Fitzgerald dormitories, Virginia realized that she forgot to check on her trunk at the Denton train station. So she went the whole way to the school and forgot, oh yeah, my trunk is on the train, or something like that. She said she forgot. So she asked the taxi driver how much would it be to take her back to the station, to which he replied 75 cents. I'm guessing this is coming from this other woman, Marjorie Webster. Webster asked if she needed to ride back with her, but Carper refused, saying, no, I'll go alone. It'll be all right. After arriving again back at the station, so there were people who said, yep, the taxi driver did take her back to the station. Carper went inside to get her trunk, but came back a few minutes later claiming she could not get it for whatever reason. She spoke to a railroad employee named Mr. Button, Butrell, who told her the trunk would not arrive until later. So her trunk was not on the train that she was on. Very strange. Zachary, the taxi driver, told Carpenter to sign the back of her claim check and that he would pick it up and deliver it to her the next morning. So he said, okay, well, being that you don't have to wait around and everything, I'll just get it for you. If you pay me, I'll just come and get it for you the next day. These were the 1940s. And she agreed. Carpenter agreed and gave him her luggage receipt after writing Virginia Carpenter, room 200, Breckenridge Dormitory, with $1 for the extra tip, $1, which would be like maybe $20 today. Upon arriving back at Breckenridge at the dormitory for the school, being dropped off by the taxi driver at 9:30 p.m., the taxi driver said he saw a yellow or creamed color convertible parked in the front of the dormitory. There was no moon, and the street lights were out due to repair work on a cable. The taxi driver said that Carpenter got out of his car, walked up to this other convertible vehicle, which had two young men standing by it, one of whom was tall, the other one was short and stocky. And the taxi driver heard Virginia ask, well, what are you all doing here? The taxi driver said it seemed as though she was surprised to see these two guys. The shorter guy talked to her and lifted her onto the curb. Carpenter told the taxi driver to place her luggage. So while she's with these guys, she turns around and says to the taxi driver, when you get my luggage tomorrow, just leave it right around here and I'll get it tomorrow. I'd place the luggage on the ground because the boys would get them for her and to leave her trunk there in the morning as well. So taxi driver gets all her luggage out. She says these guys would get her luggage, and when he gets the trunk tomorrow, just leave in the same area. It should take care of it. After doing so, the taxi driver drove off, and that was that. That was the last anyone saw of Virginia Carpenter. Reports claim that a night watchman also saw, so a night watchman, like a security guard at the school, saw Virginia get out of the cab and into the convertible. So there seemingly is a witness to back up this taxi driver's story. The next morning, Zachary dropped the trunk off. So he did go get the trunk as she wanted him to do. She brought it back. He brought it back to the school and put it right exactly where she told him to put it. After being there, but the trunk sat there for 2 days. But then by that time it was taken to the office. The dean of women at the school later explained to Mrs. Carpenter, Virginia's mother, that it was the first time someone did not deliver luggage to the room. But of course, the taxi driver, was just doing what Virginia allegedly told him. So by that time, of course, they figured out whose trunk it was, and Virginia wasn't there, and this disappearance begins. And of course, this taxi driver, told this story after allegedly he was just finding out that she was missing. 3 days later, on June 4th, Carpenter's boyfriend, who didn't go to that school, of course, it was a women's college, Kenneth Branham of Dallas, called her mother in Texarkana, called Virginia's mother, and said he could not get a hold of Virginia. Mrs. Carpenter, now worried, called the school and found out that her daughter never enrolled. And this is something that confuses me. She was moving into a dormitory, but she was not enrolled at the school yet. Okay. The mother then called friends and relatives of her daughter, who the daughter may have been visiting, but they had not heard from her. On Saturday, June 5th, around 12:30 a.m., the mother called the local authorities and the Denton police to report Carpenter missing. The Texarkana police told her to just go to bed and we'll get on the case in the morning, kind of like what they do these days. But she could not sleep. The mother could not sleep. So she and another woman, a friend, left for Denton. And late Saturday night, the girl's uncle and friends went to Denton to help assist the police in their search for any helpful information, but they failed to shed any light. Airplanes began scanning the Denton area, and motorboats were used to search ponds and lakes. Search parties searched the forest, as well as tanks, storm drains, creeks, country roads, and abandoned wells. The search went statewide as police checked out drivers of light-colored convertibles in Texarkana and Denton, but came up with nothing. A Texas Ranger entered the investigation on Monday, June 7th. along with the chief of police and Jack Shepard, and Roy Moore asked this guy to get involved. Sheriff Roy Moore. More of officers talked with groups and individuals as possible witnesses. Hunters and farmers were asked to be on the lookout for freshly dug dirt or any unusual odors. Pictures and a description of Carpenter were sent to various agencies all over the state. Carpenter's trunk was eventually opened, but it gave officers no clues. Her handbag was never found. Now, I guess what we should also say, so you should know, you're probably thinking, well, what about this taxi driver? Well, the taxi driver was polygraphed, and he passed. And his wife, at least at the time in 1948, gave him an alibi. However, 10 years later, she said she lied. And then, in fact, he did not get home at 10 at night or whatever. In fact, he didn't get home till like 2 in the morning, just so you know. Of course, she had a boyfriend, but in another article that I read, reading about this, trying to get more information on it, and even doing, looking at newspapers.com, the fact is Virginia Carpenter, and you have to remember when she was doing this, she wasn't just going off to school, but this time she was already like 24 years old. It seems that she had had multiple boyfriends, in fact, had been engaged and then broke off the engagement. It seems like she was very popular with the guys. I'm not saying she was, got around or anything, but you definitely get an idea from what was said about her that she was popular with guys. But she did have a boyfriend at the time, and it seems that, he was nowhere around here. He is not the cause of her disappearance. And like I said, she was popular with the male species, and in fact, she almost got married. What is also interesting about Virginia Carpenter, if you know anything about the Moonlight murders, which were never solved, she knew 3 of the victims because it happened in the area where she grew up. She knew 3 of the victims, and that, of course, went down the rabbit hole reading up about that. It was the Texarkana Phantom Killer, but now all of that is known as the Moonlight murders, never solved. And like I stated, it does seem that there is somebody to back up the taxi driver's story, and that there was this security guard. That's what we call him now. Night watchman back then, security guard now, that did see her with these guys and get in this convertible, allegedly. But we know about eyewitness statements. So there you go. That is the disappearance. Of course, I'm getting to get into the questions and the analysis for all of this. But that is the disappearance. Seemingly, allegedly, she got dropped off at school, met these 2 guys, never to be seen again, never went up to the dorm. I guess I'm going to get into this analysis, but I'm guessing that the luggage that was actually with her never made it up to the dorm either, I guess. Of course, she told the taxi driver these guys were going to take the luggage up. It seems that never happened, if these guys even exist. So I'm going to look at this as I've been doing. I'm going to look at this as if I were doing a consultation. Of course, going back to the 1940s is a little tough. Of course, this happened today. We'll be talking about phone records and pings and everything else. So I have to keep that in mind. If I were doing a consultation with a family member of Virginia's, if I was, existed, I was around back in 1948, and one of their family members came to me and, well, Ed, what do you think went on here, and what do you want to know, and how can I, Ed, how can I help you analyze this? What can I do to help you help me, to put it in Jerry Maguire language? Here are some questions that I would be asking a family member, anybody who came to me about this disappearance. Of course, like I said, that never could happen now. It's 78 years ago. What is the truth about her male relationships? Like I said, portrayed as a woman who was popular with the guys. Is that true? Is that not true? Was there any particular guy who seemed to like her more than the others? Was there any guy, because she had a boyfriend, was there any guy or guys who didn't like that? And maybe somebody who would be a good candidate to ask would have been her boyfriend. But I would really want to know a lot about the men in her life and what do I call it? Orbiting, men orbiting her, just maybe looking for their chance to get her attention. I'd really need to know a lot about that. I want to know, why did she pick this school? Is it because it was a women's school? You have to remember, this is a totally different culture and everything else. How did she go about picking that school? How did she go about even deciding to go there? Was there possibly, I guess where I'm going with this is, did she possibly pick that school for some other reason other than the education? Did she go there because somebody lived there that she liked, even though she had a boyfriend? Was there some other guy who lived there? I'd really need to know a lot about the picking of that school. I realize it's a women's college, but maybe it was that. But we also have to realize, most schools back then were co-ed, and she could have had her pick of many, 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 schools there. Why did she pick this one? If this was some sort of really wanted to go back, and women can only go to certain schools and they're only allowed to go with the schools that are just for women, then of course that's really, really going to limit a woman, women's choice. But that's not what was going on in 1948. So what made her pick this school? Could we sure it's just because of the education? Also, do the descriptions of the guys sound like anybody she knew? This seems like a very obvious one. Obviously, the description that the taxi driver gave wasn't that helpful, because it's still, the disappearance still unsolved. No names ever mentioned. Still, I'd have to ask. And you mean nobody she knew had a car like that? Now, maybe because, of course, it could have been, of course, this is a convertible, but we have to think about the 1940s. Convertibles, more common than you maybe realize back then. Maybe not that rare of a car. Of course, the car could have been a rental, probably not. But it could have been some guy's parents' car. Could have been a friend's car who wasn't even there. So how really deep did they go in looking at people around Valerie and trying to figure out if this car could be connected? I know it says that they were looking for this car, but if they're just going to do any of her friends have that car, and they just go look at all of her friends and none of these guys have that kind of car, never did, and then just leave it at that. Well, I don't think that would be going deep enough. You might have to go to it's like the 6 degrees of seven bacon. Just don't go 1 degree. Maybe you have to go 2 degrees, 3 degrees away. I was also thinking, and I don't even know what to make of this, but it did come to my mind, so I typed it out. What are the odds that she would ride the train with another student? What are the odds that she gets on this train and another woman is going to the exact same location? Now, how this figures into the disappearance, I don't know. Probably nothing. But it does, it does really make you think about this. Of course, this woman's name is Marjorie Webster. Of course, she's probably dead by now, but it might be worth somebody's time to what did she do with her life? You can probably track her down through ancestry.com or something. I'm just thinking, like I said, what are the odds she just gets on this train and going to this college? And what do you know? Marjorie's going to the same school. Did Marjorie really go to the same school? Was this just a story that Marjorie was telling? I'd need to know more about that. And if it turned out that she did go to the school and Marjorie has nothing to do with this, well, I would want to ask her, once again, pretending I'm back there in 1948, I'd really want to ask Marjorie, did it really seem like she forgot her trunk? Or did it seem like she maybe left it back there for a reason? That's the way you have to think. Remember, missing people lie. When they say things, you can't just automatically think that they're telling the truth. She says she forgot her trunk. Are we sure that she didn't leave it there on purpose for some reason? That seems like a big oversight. I mean, think about this disappearance. She forgot her trunk was back at the station. Of course, when she back there, it wasn't there. And that's like, okay, so she gets on the train. She has the trunk. The trunk is not on the same train. This whole trunk thing, there's something about it that bothers me. I mean, what are the odds she forgets her trunk and she goes missing? You know, and I even have it written here. How often do people forget their trunks? That's like forgetting your plane luggage. That's like, flying to Hawaii for a vacation. You just go right out to the Uber and get in the car. And once you get to your hotel, it's like, oh, wait a minute. We forgot to go down to baggage. Who does that? Unless you really got ripped on the plane over. You know, if you're flying first class and they're just plying you full of champagne, mimosas or whatever, then I suppose you could do that. I'd want to know what her boyfriend thought. Being that he's not a consideration for this disappearance, I'd really just want to know, let's just talk. Tell me about Virginia. Tell me what you think. Tell me. And I also have, so the first luggage went missing, but the trunk was still at the curb. Okay. Rockford, in that context, isn't your luggage the last thing you'd forget, you'd think? Especially a trunk. Something going on there. I don't know what. I know a lot about disappearances, but given this is like in a different era, people traveling by train, people using trunks instead of wheeled luggage and all of that stuff, it's hard. You really have to, this is why I've said before, when you look at disappearance, you really have to put yourself in the place and time. And sometimes that's difficult. So she had some of her luggage. She brought it with her in the taxi, got it out. The taxi driver allegedly put it out there. And then she says the guys were going to take care of it. But I couldn't find anywhere where that luggage even ended up in her room. So it seems like she and the luggage. So somebody, let's just say this happened. And these guys in this convertible abducted her. They took her luggage too. Seems a little laborious, but okay. So my analysis of this, if I were doing this back in 1948, taxi driver could have done it. I'm not reading anything that says that he didn't. Certainly it wouldn't be enough. Just, some security guard says, oh yeah, I saw her talking to the guys and a couple guys. I saw her get into a convertible. I'm not sure that means anything. Are we sure it's the same night? Are we sure it's even Virginia? Are we sure it's not some other woman getting in a convertible? To me, the security guard story doesn't necessarily back up the taxi driver's story. So we just can't say, well, taxi driver told this story, the security guard told the same story, must have happened. I would urge you not to think that. I'm still open to the idea that the taxi driver did it, although I don't think it's obvious. It very well could be that, he drove her back there. And then, she couldn't get her trunk because, of course, there would be witnesses. And I'm sure the police went and talked to the truck. Oh, yeah, she did come back. And, oh, yeah, she did forget her trunk. And, oh, yeah. She gets back in the taxi. And, he tries to rape her or something. And things go bad. And he kills her. And then he's so thorough that he goes back the next day and gets her trunk. So he follows through after he killed the woman. He goes, Matt's really covering your butt. Overtly so. I have to admit, it just doesn't seem likely to me. Physically possible. He kills her and says, man, I got to make it look good. If I don't show up and get that trunk tomorrow, they're going to know that I killed her. So I got to do it. I get it. It just seems a little laborious, and it just seems a little too perfect, a little too Columbo-ish for real life. You may have a different insight in that. Certainly physically possible. It's not defying the laws of physics. Important points. It seems that whether like it or not, the trunk was left at the train station. Like it or not, that did happen. Whether she did it on purpose or not, though, or by accident, hard to say. She really did go back to the train station. There were witnesses. She really did sign the ticket. The taxi driver really did pick it up and deliver it. That's how it made it, I guess, back, and he claimed that that's what he did. He seemingly followed her instruction, if we're to believe she gave that instruction. Like I already stated, that is some strong follow-through for a killer. As far as what the driver's wife said, changing her mind so many years later, I don't know. Maybe they were getting divorced, and who knows? I would not. I would not say that is a smoking gun at all. Not even close. Not even close. Virginia, when she got out of the car, she said, what are you doing here? Was that real or was that sarcastic? It's hard to tell. Like, what were you, like she knows they're supposed to be there. So she goes, what are you doing here? Or was she really surprised? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. The question is, did Marjorie see? The forgotten person in all this is Marjorie. Did she ever see any guys in a convertible? Did she see these guys? Did she see the convertible? It's not stated anywhere. It's not stated. To go through this again, and I realize we're running out of time. Marjorie got dropped. They got there. Marjorie gets dropped off. Virginia goes back. Was Marjorie around? She didn't see anybody else pull up. Nothing. Okay, we just don't know. But we just can't tell. What are you doing here? It could be sarcastic. It could have been really, real surprise. But we have to think about it this way. Killers show up and are seen by witnesses. They're just kind of hanging out. Just sitting there. Of course, they might have thought that she was already there. Remember, she was late getting back there because of this luggage thing, this trunk thing. Maybe they thought she was already there. But still, they're just kind of sitting there waiting. If they were going to kill her, that seems like a bad choice. Of course, maybe they weren't planning and they, something went wrong. They really did take her and something. It wasn't a planned thing. Could be. Why didn't she, if she knew these guys, why didn't she just get them to pick her up at the station? Good question, right? Why did she get a taxi? If these guys lived in the area and she really did know them, why didn't she get them to pick her up? I think it's also weird to me, as already stated. She was going into the dorms, but she wasn't enrolled in the school yet. Are we sure she planned to go to school there? This is why I'm asking. This is why my question goes back to, why did she pick this school? Because this might explain why she forgot her trunk. Because if she sews up there with the trunk and really wants to make it look good, then she's going to have to take all of her luggage and the trunk up to her dorm that she's not going to that school anyway. See what I'm saying? This forgetting the trunk could have been a ruse to make sure none of her luggage goes up to the dorm because she's not planning to go to the dorm anyway. So this is something that sticks with me. And like I said, how can you be going into the dorms without being enrolled in the school yet? I don't know. At least that's my experience going to college for 4 years. So theoretically, the taxi driver did it and got rid of the other luggage, but really went and got the trunk anyway. He got rid of all the luggage. It just doesn't seem likely to me. So being that we're done here and we got to wrap this up tonight, what do I think on this? I don't think it's very likely that the taxi driver killed her. What I think is more likely, I just get the idea. I don't think she intended to go to the school. I think this was some type of thing to get out of her life, because I remember reading, although it's not in what I put in my notes here, she had gone to school, or she was in a particular career, and then she was going back to school for something totally different. This might be a Mary Jane Van Gilder situation. I can't rule out the idea that she never intended to go to this school. She took off with these guys and started something else somewhere else. The luggage thing really, really sticks out to me. And I need to know what happened to the rest of her luggage and a few other things, but we're never, in so many years later, not going to find that out. So what I think here is, I don't think this was a murder. I think that they took off. I think she got taken away to go start a new life somewhere. So that, if you want to look it up, there is a Wikipedia page with a lot more information. She's on the Charlie Project. And of course, you can go to newspapers.com. A lot of information there. If you look into it and you have some insights, I'm always ready to hear them. unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, you can comment here on YouTube as well for the show tonight. And speaking of that, let's get to this Friday's episode. We're looking at the disappearances of a married couple doing the exact opposite that Tony Schwartz and Dennis Bagnall were doing. Dennis Bagnall and Tony Schwartz and the other guy were allegedly taking a boat from the Bahamas to Florida. Eugene and his new wife were taking a boat from Florida to the Bahamas. They went missing. This happened somewhere around July 2nd or 3rd of 1982, but you need to consider this. Eugene Pavey was a big cocaine trafficker, but it is believed this was really just a pleasure cruise with him and his wife. And in fact, he invited his daughter, Dallin, to join them. Of course, Melanie Pavey was also missing, not her mother. In fact, Melanie was younger than Dallin. We'll get into that in the interview. But Dallin is the guest. She was invited to go on this boat trip from Florida to Bahamas, but her father and her father's new wife went missing July 2nd or 3rd of 1982. And so that will be this Friday's Atlantic series episode number 4. Dallin has done a lot of work on her father's disappearance. She's very frank about who her father was. And you're really going to, she's a great guest. Very well spoken, so smart, articulate, and really very honest about everything. And she saw it firsthand. She had to wrap up her father's affairs after he went missing. She has a lot to say. That will be this Friday. So Eugene and Melanie Pavey and Eugene's daughter, Dallin, Dallyn, is the guest. That's all for tonight. What a show. A lot of stuff packed in here. Tech says, and is how has the other guys kept this secret for so long? Not sure what you mean by that. Tech, exactly. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Hello, D. Welcome back. He sounds like a handful. Yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah. Great show as always. Thanks so much, Ed. Thank you. Charlie, thank you for the donation to the cause, and I appreciate it. Say hi to your sons for me. Everybody, keep your heads on swivels out there. Don't end up on my podcast. I run 5 minutes over, so this live show is done. Good night.